So I'm going to first talk about the General Preferences tab. I'm just going to go through and read through each one of these. This area, this first one here, Load and Save Options, this area modifies how View loads and saves scenes. For the most part, we leave this area at the default settings. However, for larger scenes and bigger image files, it may be desirable to check in Bypass Visual Browser for Scene and Pictures, and that's this box here. And what this basically is oftentimes when you load something in, View wants to give you a little preview thumbnail of what you're getting ready to load in. And sometimes if that thing that you're trying to load in is very, very huge, I mean, it could take a good 5 to 10 minutes for View to generate that preview. So if you know what you're going to load up, the file, the name of it, the name of the file, and what it is for sure, and you really don't need that preview thumbnail, you can just check this box in here and you won't get that visual browser for scenes and pictures. And this last little area in here talks about enable autosaving. And of course, this is pretty important. We usually leave this at default. We want it to autosave every 5 minutes, and it does a max autosaves of 10. The next area is preview options. These options allow us to modify the preview behavior of View. This is typically left at default settings because we may only want the preview to change per object and not for the entire scene. If your computer is having difficulties keeping up with rendering materials, a couple of checkboxes here can help. The first one is Disable Automatic Material Preview Rendering. This will no longer generate an automatic material preview. When a preview does not accurately represent what is really there, a small triangle will appear on top of it. When clicking Preview, it will update, making the triangle go away. The second checkbox is Only Render Material Previews in Active Editor. And this will only preview the material or function preview of the topmost editor versus all the materials you may have in a complex hierarchy. So in View, you can have several material editors open at once. And let's just say that you may have 20 material editors open at once. Of course, that probably may not ever happen, but let's just say hypothetically that you do. And in each of these material editors is a little material preview. And the default setting is View will try to update the material render for each of these 20 little editors. But let's just say that it's really bogging down your system and what you really need is just a preview of just one, and the one that you're currently working in. And by having this box checked in, Only Render Material Previews in the Active Editor, it will only render out the material in the preview of that editor and none of the other ones that you have open. And the one that it will render for is the one that you have active, the one that you have selected. So right now you notice in my options bar here it's green, and if I click on it it changes to red. That means that this window is now active, and that's how you can tell which editor is active. The next area is called Allow Network and Internet Connections. Having this checked in allows View direct access to Cornucopia's website and the ability to check for updates. If you have the standalone version, the version not managed by a licensed manager, View at startup may trigger an intrusion detection system firewalls on your network. View is basically looking for other versions of View running the same serial number. The next area is called Object Options. These settings may need to be changed if you are working with imported objects. Typically, these settings are left at default until there is a need to change them. Various types of objects can be imported into View. It is important to note each file type may belong to a certain program, but you can convert between formats to gain that object type strengths on import. For example, if you have a DWG of roads, you can export it as DXF and import it into SketchUp and then export it as an OBJ and then bring that object into View. So there's several formats, and I'm just going to kind of read through them really quick. I'm just going to give you the file extension. There's .vob, .pz3, .pzz, .dem, .shd, .raw, .3dmf, .3ds, .cob, .dae, .dxf, .lwo, .obj, and .wrl. And we can see here that there's also the ability to bring in poser objects. So if you create people or animals or figures in a program like Poser, I think it also takes in DAS files as well. If you do configure Poser import, it will also bring in those type of objects as well. The next area is called Render Options. These settings change the way View renders. And again, we typically leave these at default. We don't change them. If your system is low on memory, there are two settings to check in here to help with these types of issues. The first one is to flush voluminous data when render completes. This will free up data collected in memory used to speed up subsequent renders of the same scene. So by checking that in, that can kind of help with some memory issues. The next one is limit displacement mapping memory usage. This will allow you to specify lower limit for memory cache used for displacement mapping. A lower limit means swapping the disk will occur more frequently. It sets the balance between in-memory and on-disk displacement data storage. This frees up memory for other tasks, but because it is using the hard drive, you may notice a significant performance decrease. The next area is called Undo Redo Options. This area allows you to configure the number of undo redos and the amount of system resources used to basically do these types of tasks. This is typically left at default. If system performance is an issue during scene editing, the Flush History button can be used to clear out the memory. So let's just say that you're just running out of system resources, and this is one area where you can click Flush Memory, and it'll clean out all of the undos and redos that you have stored up. The drawback, of course, if you click Flush Memory is that you've lost all your undos and redos, and you're not going to be able to undo or redo. The next area is called Ecosystem Options. The ecosystem population warning threshold value can be set here. The default is 500,000 instances. This does not refer to the polygon count, but to the number of objects in the ecosystem. So oftentimes what will happen is you'll do an ecosystem population. You have no idea how many plant material is going to populate in one area. And since you have no idea how many plant materials will populate in there, it could populate in 500,000 trillion. And if it tries to do this, this will definitely lock your system up. It will cause potentially view to crash and you to lose your scene if you forgot to save. So to prevent this from happening, what you do is you set an ecosystem population warning threshold. And basically what we're saying here is once we reach 500,000 instances during the calculation process, we want it to warn us and say, well, you're going to approach 500,000. Do you want to continue? And that way we get kind of a nice little warning and we can click no and hurry up and save our scene, and then maybe try a lower number of instances by playing with the scale and the density to get it underneath this 500,000 threshold, or maybe we think our system can handle the 500 or more threshold value. But either way, we want the opportunity to be able to save our scene before view may potentially crash. The next area I kind of call miscellaneous items. We have interactive numerical field changes, interactive slider changes, and enable synchronization of images and import objects. And again, these are three buttons that we don't change, we leave at default. So interactive numerical field changes allows us to, of course, do an interactive numerical field change. Interactive slider change allows us to do interactive slide changes, so we can check that in or uncheck it. The third one is enable synchronization of images and imported objects, and we're going to leave this at default. The next area that we have is what I call configuration buttons. These set of buttons allow you to load interface presets, change the interface color, reset the options to default, restore disabled messages, and set gamma options. So if you notice, my version of Vue here doesn't exactly have possibly the same colors that your version of Vue have. And what you can do is you can go into this interface colors and really customize the way that your Vue windows look. And so you notice here that I've added a lot of green and some red, and I kind of got rid of that default blue color. One thing that you may also notice, I'm going to go back to this interface colors, is these series of buttons here to the lower right. This is pretty common to all Vue windows. We'll always have this OK, this exit. If we click OK, it means we are accepting any changes that we made and we're closing out. If we click exit, it means we're not accepting any changes that we made here and we're closing out. And this, of course, will bring up the help menu for this particular area. And this is new, this is open, or load, and this is save. What these three buttons mean is that we can actually save our interface color settings. So let's say I got this already set up, this is the way I want it, I can click save, and as soon as I do that, it says interface game colors, it becomes an ICS file. I can also load an ICS file. So let's say I've had to reformat because my machine got infected or something. I want my view to be back to the way that it was. I can load that interface color scheme. And this one here allows you to create a new interface color scheme. And you can also hit reset and apply. So reset will reset all of this back to default. Apply will take any changes that you made. Click apply without actually closing out this window. So since I didn't make any changes, I'm going to go ahead and hit X.